If you've been a landlord for several decades, you may remember a time when letting out your property was simple. You find a tenant, collect the rent, fix the odd leak here or there, and job done. Simple. However, fast forward to 2024, and things may have become rather complicated. One mistake could cost you thousands of pounds, but even force you to sell your property. Now, I've been in property for over 20 years, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the downright ugly in the rental market. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the 10 most common mistakes that landlords make. But make sure you stay tuned, because I'm also going to share with you how to protect yourself against these. First up is permission to let your property. And I can best explain this by way of a story. So let me introduce you to Paul. First time buyer, really excited to buy his first property. And he got a 90% loan to value, because of course it's a residential home. However, that first year he was relocated from work. And he thought, you know what, I'm going to make the best use of my property. I'm going to let it out to a tenant and go and rent a home somewhere else. The problem, well, Paul never informed his mortgage lender about him having this property as a rental. And the mortgage lender specifically prohibits Paul renting the property without prior consent. And a routine insurance review flagged the flat as a rental property, triggering an investigation. Now, his mortgage lender demanded that he either switch to a buy-to-let mortgage or paid the loan in full. Now, the challenge that Paul has is that he was struggling to get a buy-to-let mortgage. And on top of this, when he did, the interest rates were so much higher. And of course, this ate into his profits. And so Paul found himself in a challenging financial position. Now, this isn't a unique story, but it does highlight the importance of communicating this with your lender and making sure you get the best possible deal by making sure that you're transparent. If you find this video helpful, make sure you smash that like button. It really motivates me in shooting more of these videos for you. And this next one is by far one of the most common but also most expensive mistakes for landlords, and that is ignoring or perhaps not even knowing current legislation, specifically when it comes to providing the correct certificates to your tenants. Now, this is important anyway with your tenants sort of moving in and throughout the tenancy, but even more important is if you start having challenges with your tenants and you want to serve Section 21, the so-called no-fault eviction, then you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. Well, at least trouble evicting that tenant, because here are the certificates, at least the paperwork that you should have provided them if you want this to go smoothly in evicting them. So number one is the how to rent guide, providing that before you sign up the tenancy. The second one is the EPC, which is the Energy Performance Certificate, which is valid for a period of 10 years. The third one is the Gas Safety Certificate, which should be done annually before your tenant moves in, but also provide it to them when it expires and you renew. And this brings us very well into one of the most important ones, which is the deposit scheme. So you should be securing the deposit, the security deposit of your tenant with a scheme. And you have 30 days to do this. And also you have a process and you have a legal obligation to have to provide them with the terms and conditions depending on which scheme you're using. So make sure you're serving all the paperwork within the timeline, but also within the terms and conditions within that particular scheme. In recent years, landlords have found themselves with a second job, whether they realize it or not, the right to rent checks. So landlords are legally required to check that their tenants have a legal right to reside here in the UK. Now, if they're British citizens, a UK passport is sufficient. However, if they're not UK or British citizens, then what you need to do is you need to get a share code to verify that electronically. And you have to do this before your tenant moves in. Failure to do this could cost you thousands of pounds. And when it comes to inspections, neglect regular visits, and you may find yourself in for a big surprise. This can come in form as in damage to your property, maintenance issues that haven't been raised, but also you may find unauthorized occupants, perhaps even your tenants having a great little business with subletting your property. Now, these regular inspections, and of course, don't go too far. You should be doing it probably every 6 months, maybe sometimes 3 months. You do need consent from your tenants, however. And you're just making sure that your tenant is compliant with the tenancy agreement and your property is being maintained well. The fact that there are so many mistakes that landlords can make absolutely means you should subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a thing. And in the same way, regularly reviewing your rent is going to be sensible, making sure that you're not missing out on any particular income. This should be done annually, and I'd say probably make the most of the free resources that you have with estate agencies. They won't charge you a penny unless they're actually providing you with a service. That being said, if you want to do that online, you've got Rightmove and Zoopla. Just make sure you're comparing your property like for like. So apples with apples and not apples with oranges. So don't have too high expectations basing your property on another property that is in a better condition, better floor, better building, and so forth. It will also help you, by the way, if you're doing that rental review on an annual basis and keep your tenant up to date with those rents. If you just suddenly had to sell your property, you're going to be in a better position because it's going to be able to achieve a better price on that. And doing that at the very last moment probably isn't going to help you. And you don't never know what's around the corner. So make sure you keep your rental property up to date. And with rent review comes poor communication records. It's absolutely essential that landlords keep good communication logs of everything. This includes those rent reviews, complaints, tenancy agreements, certificates, and landlords must register with the ICO, which is the Information Commission Office, to be compliant with GDPR. Now, this is going to protect landlords for future disputes, but again, just remaining compliant. And this next one has got to be the number one mistake I see landlords. In fact, I did a video of this. Make sure you check that. I'll put the link on the description. So this is reference checks. Now more than ever, it's become so critical that landlords make sure they do and carry out the correct referencing on their tenants. And this includes, but not excluding, financial reference, employment, but also the previous landlords and properties that they've rented out as well, making sure they have a good record behind them. Now, together with this is also making sure you get the right insurance. So a lot of people think, oh, home insurance for landlord. Well, no, you do need to have specialized landlord insurance to protect you. And some of these, of course, include protection in terms of the property itself, but most importantly, protecting you against the tenant, making sure that if that tenant defaults, that the insurance can pay you, but also if it's some legal aspect and you need to go to court, that they can pay those legal costs, which can be very expensive. And last and certainly not least is landlords not using managing agents. Now, a lot of self-managing landlords, of course, want to save money. That's understandable, but only to find themselves being on the wrong side of the law and not being compliant and being fined thousands of pounds, which of course is counterproductive. So I would say either hire a professional managing agent or have the time to study, keep up to date with legislation, and perhaps even join a landlord organisation whereby you can have all the education and keep up to date with absolutely everything. In the meantime, I will leave you with a compliance checklist. Just download it, the link will be on the description, and I know it's going to be very helpful. And make sure you just reach out to us.